What was the weirdest like bar that you waltzed into to play at?
What was the... Hang on, my daughter's playing piano. I'm just going to text my wife.
In the family calendar.
Piano is a little loud for interview.
That's funny.
Can we play later?
Like right after. Can you believe it?
Jenna, can you believe it?
We're at the end.
This is the finale of our first season of On The Porch with Front Porch Music.
I can't believe it. 2 years ago, I'm sitting here going, can we start a podcast? And you're like, we don't have the time or bandwidth for that.
I was like, Jenna, I can't. I couldn't possibly. And then a year and 9 months ago, you're like, hey, Logan, can we start a podcast? And I was like, Jenna, we've already been through this. I can't. No. And then a year and a half ago, you're like, hey, Logan, can we start a podcast? And again, I was like, I've already told you no.
And then I persisted. A lesson in perseverance, people, because a
lesson in annoyance.
It's the same thing, honestly. Listen, we are pretty stoked. Our season finale is here, and we got to sit down with Canadian country icon, Juno Award-winning, CCMA Award-winning,
multiple Platinum Award artist,
Tim
Hicks. Yeah. It was a really awesome conversation. He's the perfect artist to close out our first season with.
And his kid was playing piano in the background. No, just kidding.
Yeah, so you'll be able to hear some piano in the background. It was, to everyone listening, thank you so much for a great year so far. It was, we started this podcast with a goal of, talking about great Canadian country music and talking with the artists and getting to know them more on a deeper level than just a regular interview. And we've really accomplished that. It's blown past all of our
addiction.
Yeah, it's blown past all of our expectations. So thank you so much for listening every week.
And sorry for the amount of F-bombs that I alone chalked up. I'll try and do better next season.
So we're going to take a couple months off, but we'll have a couple of things popping up in the feed between now and then. Some bonus content and some, little tidbits here and there. But until then, here's our conversation with Tim Hicks. Hello. Welcome, Tim Hicks, to the Front Porch.
Thank you for having me on your front porch.
Oh, anytime. I think this is the first time we've actually officially chatted in a front porch capacity.
Yeah, doing it like this way anyway.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Taking time out of your crazy busy tour schedule to join us.
No worries. I'm actually home for most of October.
Whoa. What's that like?
Well, I was home for 2 years, so it feels feels normal.
True.
We are stoked to ask you 1,000,005 questions, but I swear we won't take up that much of your time.
I have 1,000,006 answers.
Perfect. FYI, I'm the only one who knew that didn't know that Hawaiian pizza was a Canadian thing until today. But we've figured that out. We're good to go.
It's very Canadian.
The reason this came up was because I was trying to figure out a game to play with you at the end. And it basically led me to Googling Canadian stereotypes. And I was like, why is Hawaiian pizza even remotely part of the conversation? And that's how I did it. But we'll save that for the end before we send you away.
What a tease.
Yeah, seriously. Before we just cut to that, we have a whole bunch of things we want to talk about. We want to talk about growing your career in the Canadian country landscape and how you've done so well at staying consistent. So you get to, flex a little bit on that. We want to hear about your come-up story playing the bar scene and hear some of those fun stories, maybe.
Sure.
And then we can talk about touring and music and all the good stuff. So
love it. Yeah, I can talk shop all day long. So you just tell me when to start.
You just said you're off the whole month of October, so.
Pretty much.
Okay, so why don't we start with that then? Let's talk about kind of your come-up story, how you kind of got into music and played the bar scene in like Niagara, St. Catharines area. Tell us what that was like.
Well, for me, it started with lessons. So I was kind of innately musical, and my parents didn't know where I came from. My great grandmother had a organ in her parlor. She had a really old house that had a parlor in it.
I was gonna say a parlor, ooh,
which is super weird. House is still there in Niagara Falls, and I just, for whatever reason, I had talent, natural talent for music. And I remember the day my parents sat me down and said, "Now, would you like to take lessons?" And I said, "Yes, I would." And
what
they said,
lessons was this for, like the piano?
Well, this is just it. So they asked me. They said, "Would you like to play piano or organ?" And I didn't know. I was like a 5-year-old or 6-year-old kid. I didn't really have an understanding of the consequences of what I was about to say, but I said organ because I thought, it was something I knew, and I thought it was more modern than piano.
Yeah.
And so I started lessons when I was 6, and when the place I took lessons from, maybe I was 7, I can't remember. I was very young. And the place I took lessons from in Niagara Falls, they also had this thing where they put together little bands. So they put together 4 or 5 kids around the same age, around the same skill level, and you would have your half-hour lesson, and then once a week for an hour you'd have band practice, which was super wicked because all of a sudden music became a team sport. And it was I was just thinking about it today because I was watching this documentary as I was folding laundry. Very glamorous, by the way.
Rockstar life.
Yeah, called "What Drives Us," and it was a documentary about rock stars and van touring and where they started. And I was thinking about because a lot of them were saying the first time they were in a room with this band or whatever. Like for instance, Lars Ulrich has only ever been in Metallica. He hasn't been I've been in 100 bands. He's only ever been in that band, and I distinctly remember and was thinking about today the very first time that we all played the same chord together in a room, like 5 kids, with the drummer playing a beat and us just hitting a G chord, bass, 2 guitars and keyboards, and feeling the power of that really had an effect on me. And I got the bug early on, and I've always had a band ever since. And so what that meant was, eventually going beyond playing Kiwanis Festival and starting to play in public. And really what that meant was, open mics and which led to gigs and that kind of thing. And I played music at full time, so to speak. I was also going to school, but from the time I was 15 years old, I was playing in bars. And I always played with older guys for whatever reason. I think I was born at the wrong time is what I explained to people. I was born too late. So my friends were always older guys, and I played in bars with them way early on, so early on that there was one instance where we were playing a bar in St. Catharines, and the owner clued in that I was way underage and made me stand on the sidewalk in between sets because I wasn't legally allowed to be in the bar unless I was working. And because we had a half-hour break in between 45-minute sets, I had to go stand out on the sidewalk.
For a half hour.
How humiliating.
For a half hour. Yeah. No, I didn't care. I would do anything, to do the gig. I just was this is amazing. Hanging out 14, 15, 16 years old, in the bar scene and watching all that go down, It was an exciting time. So that's kind of where I came up. At the same time, I always had an original band I was pushing, but we were playing covers. And I couldn't get anybody to return my phone call, all through my 20s, late teens, and it just wasn't right until I kind of fell into playing country full time. Because we played everything when we played in bars in Niagara. Because back then, it was kind of before the explosion of the modern country era. There was no KX 94.7 in town or Country 89. There just wasn't there yet. But we were playing, Blue Rodeo and the big songs like Friends in Low Places and Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy and all those kinds of songs we were already playing in our set as the country thing exploded. And then just kind of made sense after a while. I remember telling the guys at one point, because I've had the same band for most of that as well, the back years anyway, the last 15 or so years, and 20 for me and Rob. But I remember telling them I think I want to do country full time. They're like, okay, well, we're the house band at an Irish bar in downtown Toronto. How is that going to fly? I'm like, it's going to fly. You know, like I just like would take no for an answer. I wouldn't take no for an answer. So I was like, it's going to fly. And sure enough, like here we are. It's like at an Irish bar in downtown Toronto, King and John, you know, and kids were lined up around the block in their boots and their plaid. And it was so bizarre, you know, that it just kind of happened organically like that. And, you know, to bring it all full circle, I went to go pick my daughter up at the soccer, her soccer team had a party after the season at one of the parents' houses. And I went to pick her up, and she wasn't ready to go. The girls were still playing. So I said, no problem. I'll just hang with the parents. And somebody's grandmother was there. It was in the middle of the day on a Thursday. And she says, so what do you do that you're available at 2:30 on a Thursday? I said, well, I work in the entertainment business. And then it starts. As soon as you say that, it's like I'm trying to be vague, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm there as Anna's dad and nothing else, right? Yeah. And it's well, so what do you do in the entertainment business? Oh, well, you know, it finally comes, okay, I'm a country singer. And is anything I should know? I'm like, do you follow country music? They're like, not really. I said, okay, well then no. And then she goes, well, what show are you on? I said, excuse me? She goes, well, what show are you on that you got famous from?
Oh, interesting.
That's funny.
I wasn't on any show. I said I went out and did it. You know what I mean? And that's something that I still it was hilarious at the time, and I love telling that story now. But it's, you know, I still wear it like a badge of honor that I was a working musician long before I was, you know, Tim Hicks, the artist, you know. Yeah. And you'll find me like at the CCMAs, whatnot. Like I gravitate to hanging out with the side guys rather than the other artists. You know, you'll find me hanging. Not the bad example because I love Dallas; he's a great guy. But you know, you'll find me hanging with his band in the corner. You know, versus like wherever he is. You know what I mean? Because I just like talking shop with the musicians. I'm kind of, you know, I'm a band guy at heart.
Totally.
That's funny.
So you went to UW. Did you play any like the bars in KW? Because that's my scene. So
all of them. So for instance, I lived above a place called Weaver's Arms, which was on Phillip Street, right across from RIM. And it was a student co-op residence, and in the basement was this pub, and I played there Wednesdays and Thursdays nights. We had open mic night. I started on Wednesday, and it was so popular because, of course, in the university scene, like everybody has a guitar, everybody wants to play fake plastic trees, and so I would have like 15 dudes show up to sing fake plastic trees to their girlfriends every night. So it was very popular. And I got it to a point playing this open mic night where I would only play 2 songs. I would open the night, and then there'd be all these people playing, and then I would close the night. You know, and so the bar was like, well, dude, Wednesday's going pretty good. Do you think you could do Thursday too? I said, sure.
Sweet.
So I was playing Wednesdays, Thursdays at Weaver's Arms. But I played all those bars. Like there was a place down on King Street called McMullen's that I played.
Oh, yeah.
There was the Hoother Hotel that I played. There was Shakespeare Arms. There was Molly Bloom's. There was Loose Change Louie's.
Basically just testing to make sure.
Yeah. There was Phil's, although I never played at Phil's. I ate a lot of chicken wings and drank beer there. But
you ate the food there?
Monday night was wing night there, yes. And where else was there? There was lots of those kinds of places around. The Whale and Ale.
Tons, yeah.
I played the Whale and Ale for years on Highway 7, I think, is it? Right off of the 85.
Yep.
It's
funny.
Last time I played there was like, you know, I couldn't make the date because I had to go to Nashville, and so it was like as late as 2012 that I was playing there. So yeah, I played all those bars, and you know, and again, it's like, you know, I find that in meet and greets, especially in Ontario. You know, well, I'll just say yell out where you're from, and most times I can, you know, someone, for instance, on the last weekend, I was playing in London. Someone said Windsor, and I was like, Fidel's. I played at Fidel's. You know, there's always a place. I would have like one bar in each town that I would play, which is how you get a song like The Good, the Bad, and the Pretty. You know what I mean? Like that's true. All those things are true.
Totally.
You know, in that song. So it was like it was an exciting time, and I'm just at a point now, you know, 10 years into my career at the national level, that I can look back on all those gigs with nostalgia and you know, and really kind of miss that vibe of it, you know. It took a long time because I did it for so many years. I did that for 18 years where I was playing 5 nights, 6 nights a week.
Weirdest like bar that you waltzed into to play at when you were younger and you were like, oh man. Do you have that memory?
Oh, I mean, I'm trying to think of like a weird one. I mean, they're all pretty much the same after a while. But what was interesting was this place in Windsor that we played up high. So we played on like a second level down towards, like it was really weird, and it got really hot because we were up above everybody. And one time I overheated like a hockey player and like started throwing up everywhere.
Oh,
That's not good from the second level.
I didn't throw up on people, and I told the story.
People, but
Total rock and roll. And I remember the song and everything. Like I was playing with these two brothers. We were in a band together for a long time. I was playing bass and singing, and and I overheated, and I was getting sick. And it was the last song of the night. I held on. I could feel that it was coming. It was almost like a migraine. If you've ever had like a headache really bad, and it just makes you nauseous. That was happening. And every time I stopped singing, as long as I was singing, I was okay. But whenever I stopped, the blood would rush back to my head, and it would just be pounding. So we got to the point, it was "Gimme Shelter" that we were playing the Rolling Stones. And it got to the end, and our guitar player, who was awesome, used to just solo out forever, like to kind of waste the last 5 minutes of the night just playing guitar. And I got to that point, and I ran back beside the drummer and knelt by his hi-hat. And just started throwing up all over the place, and he was playing, and I'm playing bass at the same time.
Oh my god!
And I'm on my knees playing
multitasking
bass.
at its finest.
Because they're a 3-piece band, you can't stop playing. So I'm like, I'm hanging on, and he goes, "Hey, are you throwing up? Oh, that's awesome! That's awesome!" And I'm hanging on, and I'm going, "Stop the song!" Whoa. He's like, "What?" I was like, "Stop the song!" I was dying.
No!
He goes, "What? Oh, okay." Like to get us out of it. And it was like such a moment. And thankfully, like it was just water from drinking water, right? And just trying to hydrate myself while I was singing. But we knew the bar staff so well, they came up and handed me a mop.
Oh.
And that's how the night ended.
I am such a sympathy barfer. Like that would not have gone well if I was up there.
Oh, it was. In hindsight, it was hilarious. Like I kept playing the song even though I was throwing up, and no one saw me because we were kind of like I was sort of back where the drummer was, so it wasn't an embarrassing thing. But man, trying to play bass at the same time and coordinate that, it was very difficult. And we had a lot of laughs. We had a lot of laughs about that one.
Yuck.
That sounds traumatizing, more or less, to me. I don't know.
So, Tim, you've obviously, done the bar scene, done it all. Was there like a time, or maybe multiple times, where you were just like, okay, I'm done with this.
Yes.
We need to move on?
Yes. Yeah. There was one very famous time for me. We've talked about it lots, me and Amanda, where we weren't married yet, but we were living together, and she had... she's a public health nurse. She has a great job with the region of Niagara. And so the region of Niagara, like they oversee tons of stuff in our region. And so I remember kind of reaching a point, like say 15 years in to my career playing covers, where I was like, I was just sick of it. I was just sick of missing everything because, I was always working on the weekends, and every night I would leave the house at 7 and get home at like 4 in the morning. I was on opposite schedules. And I had just gotten back from this. It was a real low point for me. I was playing in a Beatles tribute band, and I toured the world doing that. But I got sick of it fast. And when I got home, all the bar gigs that I had, like I thought I was going to come home to like a hero's welcome, like here's our world traveler, back from doing the thing, And what I came back to was we don't have any space for you. We can't book you. Or the person that I had a relationship with had moved on, because in the bar scene that would happen often, like high turnover. And so I had no gigs, and I was really down and out. And I remember saying to Amanda, like, can you get me an interview with the region? And she's like, to do what? And I'm like, anything. I'm just sick of it. Like I'm sick of dealing with bar owners. I'm sick of dealing with drunk people. I'm just sick of it. I'm just sick of the whole fight. Like I used to get high anxiety when I would buy these like little vinyl monthly calendars from Staples, and I would buy one a year, and that's how I would book myself. I had open the page to January, and it would have like 30 squares, and I would just fill those squares. And I remember every quarter opening that book and just feeling the dread of looking at empty squares. And that was enough to drive me. Like there was only 1 or 2 points in my career where I didn't have work, and this was one of them. And I remember asking her, and she was like, she kind of gave me the beat down a little bit. She was like, "Oh, boo-hoo." And I was like, "Boo-hoo what?" She's like, "You get to go out every night and do what you love to do. Why can't that be enough? Why do you have to, what more are you looking for? Because there's people that go to work every day and hate everything they do. And, but do it and they're miserable, Here you are, you're miserable on the couch and you're doing what you love to do. Like, I'd hate to see you miserable doing something you didn't want to do." And that really turned me around. Like, I was like, that's interesting.
What a beautiful reminder.
And, it gave me a lot of perspective real fast. And I remember feeling really good for a long time. And it wasn't long after that, because it was like, as soon as we had that talk, and she was like, "I don't care what you do. Like, I don't care that you don't have $1 million, or that you aren't a famous rock star. Like, I don't care. As long as you're holding up your end of the bargain, and doing what you love to do, like, that should be enough." And that gave me the confidence to just stop caring about everything. And it wasn't long after that the phone rang and I was headed to Nashville. So it's almost like a lesson in, like, you got to let go. You got to let go, or you have to open yourself for opportunity to happen. That the anxiety and the close-offedness that I was feeling at that time, because I was like, and I still am, like, a worrier, and like, I'm never in it. A lot of that comes from, when I was growing up, and this get way too deep for you guys, but when I was growing up, it was like,
let's hear it.
It was kind of like beaten into me that I would never, that I would never get a mortgage if I was a musician, and that I would never have a car or get a car loan because they would never give someone like me credit. And that, I was in for a life of suffering, and why would you want to live out of a suitcase? And these are things that, my family said to me, because it was like crazy.
Well, that's what we were all taught too. Like,
it was crazy. Yeah. And, and I realize now, like, I don't hold any, I held that like a chip on my shoulder for a long time, but I don't anymore, because now as a parent, I understand the worry of, like, worrying about your kids, and, like, man, do you really want that? And, like, people ask me all the time, like, are your kids musical? Do you want them to follow in your footsteps? And the answer is no, I don't. I want them to have music in their lives and for it to bring joy to them. But I don't want them to necessarily follow the same path that I followed, because it was like there was a lot of disappointment and heartbreak along the way, and a lot of, people to prove wrong. Like, for me, that was my thing. It's like, I'm going to prove you wrong. And when I was asking Amanda to get me the interview at the Region, I had already come to a point where I didn't need to prove anything to anybody. I've been doing music as a job for so long that everyone went, well, I guess you can do it. I guess it is okay, And then this wonderful opportunity happens, and it is true. Like, babies are good luck. Like, as soon as we had a baby in our hands, and it was like, boom, record deal. Life's crazy, and we've only been processing that. Like, it took until COVID really to process all of that, because it was like 8 years of craziness, Finally had time to sit down and go, wow, what was all that? Where are we? Who are you now? Who am I? Who are the kids? I want to meet them. You know what I mean? Like, try doing my best to balance it all, but that's still the hardest part of this game for me, is like the balance of being a dad and a husband and a person, and also being an artist and a product. Yeah,
it's a wild industry. It takes a real specific personality and type of person to, make a real go at it without ruining themselves.
Yeah. So there you go. That was a little history lesson in where I came from. And, I get asked all the time. Like, I played a ton. Like, I played in rock bands and top 40 bands and disco bands and country bands and bands that did all those things, Irish bands and duos and trios and quadruples. And, I was a crew guy. I did Spotlight. I would wrap cables. I learned to do monitors. I wanted to know how to do every job, because I was so into it, and I still am. Like, I just took my kids to Long McQuaid this afternoon, like, to get a metronome and some headphone extensions.
It's basically your Disneyland.
Yeah, we still spent 40 minutes like walking around, like looking at the gear, talking about it, and why this one costs this and why this one cost. You know, it's just like I just love everything to do with music and playing in bands and gear, and it's still very romantic to me.
When did you start recording like original music?
I've always recorded original music.
Even like throughout, like going through like the bar scene and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. We always had a CD that we were pushing off the stage with whatever project we were in, and I have copies of them all, and you'll never see or hear any of them.
Oh, come on. We need a new theme song next season.
No way. But I mean, I did. Been recording probably since the very first time I was in a recording studio was with this day camp at the Boys and Girls Club that my mother got me into, which was really cool. I was I think I was 13, maybe it was the summer I turned 13 even, so I was 12, 13. And, I was late to join. And I remember the organizer, who I got to know very well, he said, because you kind of had to audition like to get a spot in the band kind of thing. And they put together this band, and then they'd have like, on Tuesday, a rep from SoCan would come. And you'd spend all afternoon talking about SoCan and what they did for songwriters and how to copyright your song. And then the next day, it'd be a guy who's an agent. And he would come in and explain what an agent does and how you pay them and all this stuff. And it was very like music business oriented. But one of the things was we got to write a song and go into a recording studio. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I just thought it was the coolest thing to sing with headphones on. And that I was like 13, So I've been hanging around studios since then, but it didn't really get serious until I was in my late teens. And then we were like, spending money on recording and got hooked up with a producer around town here by the time I was like 18, 19, and really learned how to make records, like what that looks like, how to go in and layer up things and how to learn parts and how to make it all come alive. We really learned a lot in those days in that particular band. And then I just took that skill set and continued to, like, for instance, when we cut that record, I just never stopped going to the studio. I just would go every day, even though the record was long done. And eventually the guy who owned the studio was my drummer, Rob. And Rob was like, listen, dude, if you're going to come here every day, like, you got to start doing something. So can you take out those garbages? And I learned how to like back up a session. And then from hanging around, I learned like how to figure out harmonies and how to layer them on an album and how to do all that and how to edit them and how to edit a vocal and how to, not so much how to mix, because that's a whole other skill set that I don't have. But like the art form of recording music,
That's really cool.
Yeah, and then one day somebody got sick, and there was a band, and Rob was like, "Can you run the gear?" And I said, "I think I can," just from hanging around, and I did. And I wasn't very good, but I learned from enough of the language from just being immersed in it for so many years. And there was a point at his studio, and he would roll his eyes if he was here, because we talk about it often. Mostly with positive, like looking back, but the admission to get into the studio was a tray of coffees. So guys would show up all day long, like musician guys, engineer guys, other guys that own studios, garbage men, that were musicians, and they'd show up like at the end of the day with a tray of coffees. And so there was a stack of coffees on the desk at any given time. Like we were
just
constantly microwaving. Yeah, and back then it was like double doubles. Like everybody was drinking double doubles. So it's like there
and a sugar high.
There would be 12 double doubles getting cold while the other 4 were in the microwave warming up. Like,
yuck.
And that would just keep us going all night because we would stay there until the sun came up.
Right.
Working on projects and stuff like that. I really loved that time. There was no pressure to succeed. It was just about learning the craft of making music.
That's interesting too. Mm-hmm. So like it was all about learning. It wasn't about like anything other than that. Mm-hmm. And then also like at a point where you're like, I need to give this up, and then something great happens. It was like when you're having a moment where you're like, it's not about chasing something. It's about doing what I love. I find that interesting.
Yeah, doing what I love. And, I think that's, like I mean, I think this is true of most businesses, but for me, I can speak from the music business. It's like, it's so full of peaks and valleys. and the valleys seem to last way longer than the peaks, that you have to love it.
Totally.
If you don't love it, you should do something else because you're in for heartbreak. You know what I mean? Like it's just part of it. But again, like even the worst day, you know, playing in a band is a pretty great day, you know, and we have those moments almost nightly on stage. I'll say that at some point during the day or at some point during the show, this is way better than the alley. And what I mean by that is when we were the house band at the Irish bar at King and John, there was no green room. We used to hang in the alley. And I've said it before, and this is 100% true. You can double check this with Rob and Doug and Andrew because they were there. But we would literally eat shepherd's pie in the alley on a 3-legged table with the rats. That happened. That was real, you know? And so,
what an image.
You know, so like sometimes we'll put it in perspective, like, you know, we roll in and sometimes, you know, we all get wrapped up in it and like we'll roll in and like the wrong kind of tequilas is in the dressing room. And I'll look at like someone will be like, oh, it's such and such. It's not such and such. And I'll go, it's way better than the alley though, right? Yep, it's way better than the alley. Or the guys that say it to me, like, you know, it's like whatever it is, you know, you're tired from the road and it's like, you know, the crowd, they started chanting Stronger Beer 3 songs in, and I was finding that irritating, and, you know, or whatever. I'll be bitching to them in the dressing room, and they're like, it's way better than the alley, though, right? And I'm like, it's way better than the alley. This is way better than the alley.
You need that on a T-shirt.
Right? Way better than the alley. In fact, we were pre-COVID, I had ordered, I canceled the order because of COVID, but we learned when we were on the road with Dirks, he has Whiskey Row. Mm-hmm. It's like a collapsible bar, right? That they roll around. So I was like, we should have our own version of that. And I had a neon sign commissioned to be made that was the alley.
Cool.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And the guys, but of course, you know, the world shut down, our tour was canceled. And so I let that one go. But guaranteed in the future, you will come to a show and be invited to the alley for a drink pre-show.
Perfect.
Excellent.
That'll be Tim Hicks's version of Whiskey Row.
I love that.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk about like touring now then? It's a little different than it was back then. So
yeah. I mean, touring now. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, currently on the 0 to 60 tour, having a blast doing it. Robin Ottolini's been out with us for the last little bit, and she's so great.
She's so good.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun being back out doing our thing. You know, we're really getting sense of 2 things. Number one, we really missed playing shows. We all really missed it a lot, and so every night is a blessing. And the world is still not back to normal. You know.
No.
Silly things like couldn't get a bus. You know, all the buses are booked because every band from here to Tokyo is on tour right now. You know, and so you know, couldn't have a guitar tech for a couple of shows. Like what? Everybody's booked. You know, because everyone's out on the road. So the world isn't quite back to normal yet, but it is really great getting back to doing our thing and playing some of these new songs from Talk to Time and just, you know, reconnecting with the guys and being in a band again. You know, that was really hard to go so long without playing a show. I had never gone that long, you know, since I was 7, you know, so it was a really bizarre experience.
No kidding.
And then you came back like during just at the tail end of the pandemic last year with your Campfire Troubadour tour, which was kind of like a really stripped down show, and it was kind of like getting back to the bar days in a sense, where it was just kind of, you know, a smaller audience and just, you know, connecting with the audience that way. It was really neat. What was the process of creating that tour like?
Well, it was really just, you know, out of a time where it's like, well, we could have crowds up to 100 people as long as they were distance, and you know, at a regular Tim Hicks show, we couldn't do that. Like, because there's no way you're going to play Hellraising Good Time and be like, and you all will sit in your seats 6 feet apart, please. And like, we played this one show in Hamilton, and I won't name it because they're lovely people that put this on, and they've been huge supporters of mine, and I was grateful for every gig. But the mandate of the show was that each chair you had to sit, and each chair was 6 feet apart. And I remember and I sang behind a plastic sneeze guard. Like we were in like a bubble. And what was super weird about that was, number one, with the lights on me, I couldn't see the crowd because I was just seeing my own reflection.
You were singing to yourself.
Which is super uncomfortable. Super uncomfortable. And I remember like kind of like squinting out into the crowd during the show and seeing this couple, especially they must have been on a date. And maybe it was their first date, but they were 6 feet apart. Sitting in these chairs, and the girl she was not impressed. She was like, "What am I doing here right now?" Like it was just like, So it really that tour was. I mean, it worked out good because Troubadour was two things for me. It was a creative outlet at a time that I really needed to be creative, and it really kind of saved me in my mental health at a time where I was really low, and it was like the people around me were going, "You need to do something creative." To as an outlet. And so that's, Troubadour was like, that was something we talked about doing for years and years, like doing an acoustic record. And, but there was always like this talk of like it being thematic in some way, like whether it was going to be like a cottage theme or a summertime theme, like kind of like a la Luke Bryan doing his spring break sort of thing. We were trying to think of like, well, if I was going to do that, what would it be? And one of our things, our COVID loopholes was that we have a fire pit in the backyard, and we could have like a couple of friends over and be distanced outside. And so that was really a saving grace for me and Amanda, was like, so we could have like some contact with other adults, in the backyard in a safe way. And so it became clear, it's like, we got to do a campfire record. That's what it is. And then Copeland took it one step further. He's like, all right, I'm going to put campfire noises and like fire crackles. And I was like, that's fine. And then I will tell you to immediately remove those from our beautifully recorded record. And he was like, trust me, it's going to be great. And when he sent it, I was like, man, this is really great. Like it really, there's a vibe going on here.
It really adds a cool vibe to it.
Yeah, that I didn't think would be, like I thought it would be super cheese. But he actually, he lit a fire in his backyard and he stuck a microphone over top of it and recorded his own fire. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of guy that he is. So it was really kind of cool. And so, to tour that, it's like, okay, well, if we're doing shows to 100 people, we can't afford to bring everybody. So it just became, sort of became the Troubadours. Me, Jeff, and Chris would go out and execute this material. And we really only played in Ontario, but it came at a great time for everybody. And, I remember our first show on that run was in London at this like kind of winery place. I forget what it was called. Beautiful venue. And we had our wives and our kids there. And when we finished sound check, like our wives had tears in their eyes. And it was like, they're like, it's just so emotional to hear live music again. It was such a we are doing the 100% the right thing, by doing this. Even though it was like we were still subject to public health, restrictions, and we had like officials coming around and like making sure that we were a certain distance from people and that they were a certain distance from each other, and which is all valid stuff, and I support that 100%. But it is weird for a gig, to be like, and he shall sing 30 feet from the first person,
behind a sneeze guard.
Exactly, like behind a sneeze guard or whatever it is, But that's really, it just became of like, well, what can we do? What can we get away with? And what is appropriate here? And that's how we came up with doing that run. So that was a very long answer to your very short question.
That's okay. We went to a show on that tour too.
Yeah.
And what I learned, that was the first time I've ever seen you play it too live. So I didn't realize, but Tim Hicks fans know every word to every song. And I was sitting there and I thought, oh man, I took somebody's spot who could have been singing every single word from back in the day too.
All good. Yeah, I mean, they're very passionate. And, my team tells me that all the time. It's like your community, they call it your community, your fan base, your community. They're very engaged. Which is a, businessy way of saying that they dig it all. Like they're really ferocious about it. And I love that.
Yeah.
And I love that at gigs, and I think they know that I love that. And so it's like, it's this perfect sort of symbiotic relationship of like, we want more. Okay, I'll give you more. If you want, if you like that, check this out. It's like continually one-upping each other, from a crowd performer sort of point of view. So much so that it culminated. Like we played in London, Ontario, last week or so. I can't remember now. Maybe last week or the week before. I can't remember. But it was literally the best show I've had in years.
Really?
And what I mean by that is it was the perfect combination of like I felt good vocally. The band was like the perfect combination of loose and relaxed, but still executing the material. And it felt like we elevated, and the crowd like reacted to that, and then we elevated more, and then they reacted to that. Like it was one of those shows that I'll never forget. Like it was just such a good moment, to be on that stage with those guys. And we have this microphone that we have on stage that only we can hear. Like, for instance, if somebody breaks a string or something, we need a second. Someone will say, "Oh, Jeff broke a string. Just tell a joke," or something like that. Like we use it for practical reasons, but we also use it to talk to each other and make each other laugh and stuff like that. And I hit the mic the very first time in the set that I can sort of relax is about 4 songs in. At the end of Whiskey Does, in the live version, we do like a huge guitar solo, like everyone takes a solo, and then a couple of guys wind up doing a harmony thing at the front of the stage. It's the first time I can kind of like just sit back and play and be in the band, rather than worrying about like fronting the show. And I was on that mic. I was like, I feel so good tonight. This feels so good. And like the guys are like, they're all laughing, right? Because they're like, wow, what's gotten into him? But it was just something. There was just something in the air that was I couldn't define, but it was really one of those magic moments, that we sort of chase. That you're always chasing that as a performer, and when they happen, you really you learn to covet them.
Yeah, no kidding.
I mean, especially after the last 2 years we've all had. Mm-hmm. I mean, even just for us, like, even in the business side of things, it's been so nice to have things get back to somewhat normal.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just even a little bit, just a taste of normalcy. I think it's just what we all needed,
Definitely. I think we should go back to the fan base thing a little bit, just because I want to talk about how you've really built like a solid space and lane, if you will, for yourself in the Canadian country landscape, and you have this really consistent crowd, consistent fan base, and like you're like you might be like in a valley, but it's like a high valley right now. You do quite well. So like I'm wondering if the focus on like the Canadian industry specifically, because you haven't necessarily like gone global a lot, and even like in the US, that's not necessarily like, it doesn't seem like it's a priority for you. So do you think like really focusing on what the Canadian fans want has been very helpful for you in keeping this really great momentum for your career?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, definitely the US thing is a conscious thing. I decided, because I signed my record deal when I was 33 with a baby, and I really feel like if you want to break America, that's a young man's game. Like, and if I was single and 20 or 25, I might have considered that, but it wasn't that important to me, and I only ever wanted, like, anybody that knows me knows that, for me, all I ever wanted to be was like uniquely Canadian, like Stompin' Tom or Blue Rodeo or the Tragically Hip, and these are bands that I highly respect. And it's not to say that they're better than other acts that have done the global thing, but it's just not. It wasn't something that I really wanted to do. Like, I just wanted to be able to do music as a living and put food on the table and keep the lights on and live a comfortable life, So I decided I didn't want to do that. And I mean, we've made inroads in Australia. I had a #1 down there with What a Song Should Do. And just going over to do the C2C thing in London in this past March, it was like, it's pretty evident that, if we chase it, we're going to be able to get something going there too. It was really exciting to watch. We did 4 shows over the weekend, and our wives came, and even they would tell you, like, to watch the crowd build over the course of the weekend was stunning. It was stunning and exciting. Like, it was like, oh, I remember what this felt like, to sort of start at ground zero and watch it build. But yeah, I mean, the Canadian thing, I can't really put my finger on it. Why I've been allowed to have a career that's 10 years long and others maybe not so much. And I really felt that when a couple of the bands that came out around the same time as I did fell to the wayside, I was like, oh my God, that can happen? Yeah, like that can happen? Like, you can lose your record deal and like just never do music again? Like, what? Oh my God, But all I can say is I think, this is my inkling, and this is my uneducated opinion, and anyone's welcome to kick me to the curb. I think that, having the experience, the years of playing every night, or like 5-6 nights a week, literally for almost 20 years, literally, kind of really does put me in my own lane. Like as I move, and that's not a flex by any means. Everybody has a different path, and I'm not saying like mine is better. I'm just saying that mine was different, than a lot of my colleagues. And I think that the fan base, even though they might not be able to put their finger on it, there's something to be said about, being a comfortable, confident performer. And really, that's what my whole game is like everything that I do, from writing the songs to the way we record them to how we pick them and how we sequence them on an album, is to get people to a show where I can, play those songs in front of them and hopefully bring them to life. And then usually when that happens, people go, these guys are pretty good. And, I remember saying to the guys, because, we're in a point in this business where everybody, doesn't matter who you are, is seeing a decline in ticket sales. And I remember saying to the guys early on, like, we can't be discouraged. We just have to remind everybody that we're a really great band. And, and they'll tell everybody, if 10 people come to the show, they will tell 10 people, and next time we roll through, there'll be 100 people. And they'll tell 10 people, and the next time we roll through, there'll be 1,000 people. And we just got to build it back up again, And so I think that that's my guess, is that, fans can sense the difference between, someone that maybe hasn't been doing it as long and versus like a seasoned group of journeyman musicians,
Totally.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, whatever that is, it really comes across that, music comes and goes, but it seems like you've really had the staying power, because it doesn't seem like it's gone to your head, and that comes across. And it's, like having spent a bit of time with you, like you're quite humble, and it comes across on stage. It comes across in your music, and it's that has to be part of it as well, I think.
Well, I think that comes from, because things happened to me a little later. So like, I was a grown man and a father. You know what I mean? You have a way different perspective than when you're 23. And I said this a lot, a lot early on in interviews. Like, if this ride had happened to a 20-year-old Tim Hicks or a 22-year-old Tim Hicks, I'd probably be in rehab. You know what I mean? Like, because I could see it would be so easy to get wrapped up in it and wrapped up in the dark side of it, to try and fill that cup constantly. But like, I tell people all the time, it's like, if I was at the gym, and one of the trainers, she's like, oh, you're just so cool. You were playing the El Macamba the other night, and then you're here with us. And I was like, yeah, but it's just a job. That's it. And I love my job. I love it. I love to go do that. I said, but, I went and did my job. And yes, I woke up in my bed and I came to the gym, the same as you did, And so for whatever reason, I think people are always impressed by, the entertainment business, and it's kind of elusive, because I think it's because it doesn't really come with a manual. Like, if you want to be a lawyer, you go, okay, I need to do an undergrad, and then I need to apply to law school, and I write my LSAT, and I get into law school, and then I'm in law school for a certain amount of time, and then I write the bar, and I'm a lawyer. But if someone, you want to be like, a rock star or a country star or whatever, it really doesn't come with a book. Like, you can post something on TikTok, you can get out and play, you can, there's all these different ways to kind of do it, and so much adversity and a lot of luck comes into play, right sound, right time. And I talk about that all the time. Like, when I was discovered, quote unquote, Jason Aldean and Eric Church were the biggest things going. And here I am playing country rock with a guitar, with a band ready to go, and I just happened to be standing in the right place at the right time, and we didn't even really know what to do with that. But and then when I started to go to Nashville, and it became apparent to me, because every time I did a write, somebody would say, Tim Hicks, huh? And I'd say, yeah. And they go, what's your real name? I'd say, oh, it's Tim Hicks. And they're like, yeah, but what's your real name? I'm like, no, it's Tim Hicks. And I remember like Jeff Copeland rubbing his hands together going, perfect. Perfect. What do you mean? It's like, oh yeah, Tim Hicks, yeah, I should be a country singer. This makes total sense. It was just like, it was so bizarre to me that it was like right in front of me the whole time. but it took, sort of 30 years to figure it out where I fit, where I belong. And again, I was standing in the right place with a pair of boots and a guitar, and next thing I know, I was headed to Nashville.
Nice.
That is...
Well, we are coming on to the end of our time, sort of. But before we get there, we were talking about, your space in Canada, and Jenna has a few Canadian stereotypes and Canadian questions.
Yes. Okay.
That she wants to know the answers to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So normally I do sometimes I do this or that. Sometimes it's rapid fire questions.
Sure.
I was trying to make a game out of stronger beer.
Right.
And I spiraled
and drank all the beer. No, I'm kidding.
I didn't have enough sleep, so this is where we ended up. We ended up on Canadian stereotypes, and I think this is not a stab by any means, but I think you're super relatable because you're a dad and you go to your kids' games, and it's you're like my dad. That's cool. We can ask you those Canadian stereotype questions.
Sure. If I don't know the answer, I just make it up anyway, like every dad.
Exactly. Okay. So some of these are very serious, and others are even more serious. So the first one, Canadian stereotype. Do you actually love winter or nah?
I do. I like the coziness of winter, and Amanda constantly, she's laughing. She laughs at me constantly because she hates it. She's an island girl. She's half Trinidadian, right? So, she's like, oh, I remember last year, she's like, oh, it's going to be a long, cold winter, blah, blah. I was like, it's going to be cozy. That kind of energy. I really do. I like the change in seasons. I really look forward to that. I love visiting Muskoka. My dad lives in Huntsville. So we typically get at least one winter trip in, if not two, where, I love outdoor stuff in the winter, like ice skating on the lake and cross-country skiing and tobogganing and all those things, So I really do.
I'm the same way, and Jenna is just not at all having any of that.
Yeah.
I was born in the dead of summer. Of course, I don't like winter.
Yeah.
Do you have... are you a hockey fan? And if so, favorite hockey team?
Yeah, well, okay, so I get asked this a lot, and so most of the time I just say Leafs, just because I live in St. Catharines.
You have to.
Yeah, it's kind of regionally it's appropriate to cheer
be
for
honest
them.
here.
But if I'm honest, what I love are two things. Number one is our national events. So when Team Canada is playing, Russia
World
or
Juniors?
the U.S., I love those moments. Or Olympic hockey. Olympics period. I love anything I just feel so patriotic, because I'm invested, right? I'm invested. And also I love junior hockey. So we have a hockey team here in town called the Niagara Ice Dogs. And it's you can just see the passion in these kids' eyes because they still love it. It's
They
not
haven't-
a job to
yeah.
them yet.
Yeah. My brother and I talk about that all the time. We go watch.
Yeah.
We went to the OHL finals in May, and we were like, "This is the best hockey we've watched."
Because they're hungry. Yeah, they're hungry.
They're still chasing something. It's so cool.
And that's evident. And so those are the two things that I really love when it comes to hockey. Also, chips and dip. Hockey should come with chips and dip.
Chips and dip should just come with all aspects of life. I mean,
yes.
Okay. Speaking of patriotism, what is your Tim Hortons order?
Medium regular, everything bagel, toasted with butter.
Okay.
Unless I have an interview, in which case, for sure, a poppy seed's going to wind up in between my teeth. So I might go cinnamon raisin toast with cream cheese.
Okay.
solid.
Finish the sentence. Maple syrup goes best with...
French toast.
I dip my French toast in ketchup.
Ew.
They should take your passport for that.
Yeah, they really should. Kick you across the border.
How many times a day do you say sorry?
I don't know. I've never counted.
Typical Canadian.
Inappropriate number. I don't know. I feel like I don't over apologize, but
Okay.
yeah, I'm really sorry. I don't know the answer to that.
That was like the most important one, but it's fine.
I did have to recut. So speaking of the word sorry, in Forever Rebels on Shake These Walls, it said, "We can't buy that. Ain't sorry about that." I had to go back into the studio and recut the word sorry because my producer felt I sounded too Canadian. I had to sing sorry about that. So there you go.
That's
Okay.
Yeah.
When is it cold enough that you switch the ball cap for a toque?
Well, I did the other day, but it was preemptive. because it was too cold or too warm rather by the end of the day. But usually when we get frost.
Okay.
Yeah, or the snow flies, and then once it's on, it stays on till March.
Okay.
Yep.
Favorite Tragically Hip song?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think probably Blow It High Dough.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then finally, Logan thinks the Tragically Hip are overrated, by the way.
No.
That should be passport revoking.
Okay. It is.
Okay, so personally, I need to explain myself because this can't be on the internet. Mm-hmm. So I fully appreciate them as a band, what they've done for culture and for the Canadian, world.
Yeah.
I've seen them a few times, and I was just like, not for me.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
I know.
Okay.
I know. Unpopular opinion.
It's all right. You're entitled.
It's okay to be wrong sometimes.
Wrong opinions, yeah. That's nuts. Okay, the last one. Stronger Beer states it takes me 6 beers to get pissed drunk, but for you it takes 9.
Yeah.
How many beers does it take Tim Hicks to get pissed drunk?
I take a lot of heat for that on the internet, still to this day. Listen, it's just a rhyme, everybody. It's what we call a rhyme. I mean, I think if I drank 6 pints consecutively, I'd probably be pretty lit.
Yeah, what's the timeline?
I mean, that's just it. I mean, 6 beers consecutively, you'd feel that. You'd feel that.
Would think.
I don't know. I've never counted and gone, I am 11 beers in, and I feel pretty pissed drunk right now. But I do change the number every time I sing it.
You do?
Saying like, take me 38 beers to get pissed drunk. Wow. For you, it takes 5.
Gotcha.
Anything to keep the rhyme going, but just to keep it. That's also because I like to play with the words of that one because we've sung it so many times that I like to keep the band on their toes.
Did you ever think that song was going to just like start a riot?
No, that song was never meant to be a song. And I'll tell you quickly because I know we got to go, but the quick story is that Stronger Beer was written as a joke for my day-to-day manager who is from West Virginia. He's no longer my day-to-day manager, but we're still in good contact. And he would hang with Canadians and ask questions about Canada. And Copeland and I sort of reminded him of some of the differences one day while we were on our way to the studio, and he's like, you know what we should do? We should write this silly song for Denny. And then like write the real song, and then we'll send in the silly one. And then when they're like, ha ha, very funny, then we'll hit them with the hit song. I was like, that sounds like a great idea. So we wrote 2 songs that day and sent in, Stronger Beer, and like got this phone call like, we love it. It's going on the record. And I was like, what? No, it's not. You're missing the point. It's just a joke. Like, I can't sing that. I got to sing Bigger Balls in a Longer Field. Like that can't happen. Like I want to be taken seriously, and
it happened.
They won the fight.
And then it went double platinum, and it was never released to radio, which is really special. Like that's
yeah.
And it's become an anthem.
It has permeated pop culture, which is really, to have a song like that
cool,
is a true blessing. It's about to go triple platinum. Like
I heard someone singing it at karaoke a few weeks ago.
It's wild.
Yeah. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, and it's wild. I mean, it's one of those songs like it lives in the encore. We don't rehearse it. It's like it's become our our friends in low places, our brown eyed girl, our our Wonderwall, and what a wonderful thing to have that kind of song.
No doubt.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for joining us for our season finale.
Yeah.
Really, really appreciate it. Great to chat always.
Yeah, good to see you, man.
Yeah, whenever
you see me, but hopefully next time we can get this camera going.
Yeah, no kidding. I feel like I'm just talking to Jenna.
Yeah.
Tech support situation week. Sorry.
Thanks so much for joining us on The Porch with Front Porch Music. I love talking to artists and digging deep into the world of Canadian country music, and I'm so excited you joined. If you liked this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. That's the easiest way for you to support this show. You may even get a shout out. So we'll see you in a couple weeks next time on The Porch. On The Porch with Front Porch Music is hosted by me, Logan Miller, and Jenna Weiser. The theme song was written, produced, and performed by Owen Wrigley.